Hello students. Today we're going to talk about dividing fractions. We're talking about dividing fractions today because dividing fractions is very similar to multiplying fractions. When dividing fractions, we have two additional rules. First, when dividing fractions, step one, we take the reciprocal of the second fraction. So if you don't know what reciprocal is, we're going to talk about that here in just a moment, but we're going to take the reciprocal or flip the second fraction. Step two is to change the division sign to multiplication. So we're going to change the division to multiplication because we actually cannot divide fractions with the division sign. And step three, then we're going to follow the rules of multiplication. So we're pretty much going to do the same thing you did yesterday with the two additional rules up here with step one and step two. So we need to understand what reciprocal is, what the reciprocal is. So let's talk about that first. A reciprocal is when we flip or switch the numerator and denominator around. So we're going to switch their places. The numerator becomes the denominator and the denominator becomes a numerator. So here's a couple of examples of a reciprocal. So here's a fraction. We have 8/9. So what's going to happen, of course, we need another fraction bar, is the denominator becomes the numerator. So the 9 goes to the top. And then the 8, or the numerator, comes down to the denominator. This is a reciprocal. 8/9, the reciprocal is 9/8. Now, of course, this is an improper fraction, and that's okay for reciprocal for what we're going to need to do. So these are reciprocals of each other. We just simply switch the numerators and denominators around. Even whole numbers, you look at example 2 over here, even whole numbers have reciprocals. If you remember from the last lesson, how do I change a whole number to a fraction? I simply put it over 1. So now we have a fraction. So to make a reciprocal of 4, or 4 over 1, the 1 goes to top, and the 4, or the numerator, goes to the bottom. So that's a reciprocal, just simply flipping around the numerator and denominator. So now that we know the rule 1, or taking the reciprocal, let's go ahead and look at how we divide fractions, dividing fractions. Well, it kind of give you a little bit of a something to keep track of what you're supposed to be doing. I came up with this keep, change, flip rule, then multiply. What you're going to do is you're going to keep the first fraction the same. So if we look at this problem, we have 1/6 divided by 2/3. First thing we're going to do is keep the first fraction the same. This first fraction is perfect the way it is, and we're going to leave it alone. We don't want to change anything. The first fraction stays. We're going to change something. Well, step 2 says to change the operation. We're going to change this to multiplication. And step 1, we're going to flip or take the reciprocal of the second fraction. So we need to flip this around. So the 3 becomes the top, and the 2 becomes the bottom. So you can see the 2 and the 2 and the 3, the 2 and the 3 just change places. Now, that's step 1. Step 1 is to take the reciprocal. Step 2 is to change. Step 3 is we follow the rules of multiplication. Now, you can use either rule 1 or method 1, method 2. I'm going to use method 1 to begin with because I use method 2 so much on the multiplying one. I'm just going to multiply straight across. So here's my fraction bar. Excuse me. Multiply across the top. 1 times 3 is 3. And multiply across the bottom. 6 times 2 is 12. Now method 1 says now we have to look to see if we can simplify or if we can reduce. Well, what can go into both 3 and 12? And hopefully you recognize that 3 can go into both. 3 can divide into 3, and it can divide into 12. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 12 divided by 3 is 4. And there is your reduced or simplified fraction. There's your quotient. Now, of course, you could have recognized we divided by 3 here because both 3 and the cross from it, 6, have a factor of 3. So we could have did the cross canceling, and that would have worked. That would have gave us a 1 on the top and then a 4 on the bottom. But either way works, whichever method you're more comfortable with. So let's go ahead and look at number 2. So once again, we're going to go ahead and do number 1. We're going to keep this the same. 2/4 is perfect the way it is. If you want to write the k up top, write k up top. Next, we're going to go ahead and we're going to change. We're going to go ahead and change this to multiplication. And then the last part is the flip. And we're going to flip this around. The 5 becomes the numerator and the 2 becomes the denominator. Now I'm going to use method 2 this time here because I notice if you look at these 2's, these 2's are across each other. They can cancel each other out because they both can be divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And then I'm going to follow the rules of multiplication and multiply across. 1 times 5 is 5. 4 times 1 is 4. Once again, we have an improper fraction. We don't want improper fractions, so we have to go ahead and do the division. 4 on the outside, 5 on the inside. 4 goes into 5 once, so that's our whole number. We have a whole value of 1. 4 times 1 is 4. We do the subtraction, and we get 1. This remainder creates our mixed number, mixed number as 1 over 4. All right, and then there is our quotient of our mixed number. All right, now go ahead and check out the next video for the next example, and you're on your own. All right, students, this is the second part of dividing fractions. We have one more example we're going to go over, and then you're going to have your on your own to work through. So if we look at this problem, we have 2/9 divided by 6. Well, remember, we need two fractions, so we have to change the 6 into a fraction by putting it over 1. Well, now we have our keep, change, flip rule. Well, keep the first fraction the same. All right, 2 over 9. We're going to go ahead and we're going to change the division to multiplication. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to flip this. So 1 over 6. Now, once again, you can do the cross canceling, cross simplification with the 2 and the 6, or we can multiply straight across. I'm going to go ahead and do method 1 again. I see a lot of us, most people like method 1 because it's straightforward. 2 times 1 is 2. 9 times 6 is 54. This is the problem that comes with method 1 is we start to get big numbers like this. Now the 2 is on top and the 54 is on bottom. So this isn't too terrible because they're both even. Since they're both even, they can be divided by 2. So go ahead and make our fraction bar. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And then here's where the trouble comes in. What is 54 divided by 2? I can't do that in my head very well, but I could have divided 2 and 6 pretty easily by 2 because 2 and 6 are both even and they're across from each other. That would have gave me the 1 up top and the 3 on the bottom. So let's go ahead and just do the division real quick. Remember, you always can just do the division on the side. How many times can 2 go in the 54? And 2 can go in the 5 twice. That gives us 4. Subtract, we get 1. Bring down the 4. And then go ahead and do, how many times can 2 go in the 14? And that is 7. And of course, that is 14. So we get our 0. So 27 would be our denominator. So 1 over 27, or 1/27. Once again, please forgive me about this writing. I'm still using a mouse. If we go back to try method 2, if we cross cancel these, you end up with a 1 up top here, divide them both by 2, and you end up with a 3. And this is one way it could go quicker. 9 times 3, that gives us the 27 over here. 1 times 1 is 1. But then, of course, you have to recognize that those can be cross canceled. All right. Now is the time to go ahead and try on your own. So go ahead and pause the video, and then I'll come back and I will do one with method using. I will do problem 5 using method 1 of multiplication, and I'll problem 6, excuse me, using method 2. All right, welcome back. Let's go ahead and check this out. So we're going to do our keep, change, flip. Remember, we have to change this first. So keep. We're going to change this to multiplication. I'm not going to change colors this time. We should have color. Okay, so that's our reciprocal of 3/2 is 2/3. So like I said, I'm going to use method 1 here. So I'm going to multiply across the top. Let's make our fraction bar. 3 times 2 is 6. Multiply across the bottom, we get 21. Now, of course, both of these can be simplified. We can divide both of these by 3. And one reason I know that, because if I look at my original problem, I have a 3's across from each other. 3's can be simplified by 3. So let's go ahead and do that simplification real quick. And we get equals 2/7, or 2/7. And this is our reduced fraction for number 5. Sorry, this is our reduced quotient for number 5. So let's go and look at the last one, number 6. Like I said, I'm going to use method 2 here. So first we got to do our keep, change, flip. We have 4/9. Change the multiplication and flip the second fraction. And we go grab a different color to show the cross canceling. I'm going to cross cancel the 9 and the 6 because 3 can go into both. So let's go ahead and change this. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And now we go ahead and we do the multiplication. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 5 is 15. Now we always want to double check, can I simplify this down any further? And of course the answer is no in this case, so that is your simplified fraction. So either way, method 1, method 2 for multiplication works, but we have to remember our keep, change, flip. We have to keep the first fraction, change the multiplication, flip the second fraction. All right, if you didn't get either one of these correct, go ahead and raise your hand for Mr. Montgomery to come by and help you out. You need to know what's going on before you start the assignment.